Greetings. Welcome to another edition of the Has Been podcast. And I am your resident has been um, because that's who I am. That's what I do. Let me adjust this a little bit. It's Wednesday morning, November 19th, 2025, the year of our Lord. Um, Plenty to get to. Um, Start with men's basketball. They're on the road Thursday, Friday in the Bahamas. Big two games for them after coming off last week. They moved back to number one in the polls, as they should have been. They should have never dropped out. And then keep in mind, polls in basketball, or really any sport, don't really mean a whole lot. To put a number by your name and creates excitement or angst or whatever. But anyway, they're back to where they should be. They should have never dropped off. Those that dropped them from number one after two. Um, they were not stellar performances against Evansville and Oakland, um, but this is what our society has become, not just in sports, but the overreaction to things. Um, and when something great happens or good happens, you shouldn't overreact to that. So anyway, they're back to number one. It's where they should be right now. Will they stay number one the rest of the year? Probably not, because they're likely not going to go undefeated. That could be challenged this week because they play Memphis to start, and that's a game I think that they should win and can win. And then, hopefully, just from a pure audience basketball standpoint, let's hope they play Texas Tech uh, in the championship game of the Bahamas tournament down there. Texas Tech, really, really good team, very physical. They got some players, just like Purdue has some players. They're a Final Four caliber team. And I think that would be the matchup I think you would want to see in November at one of these tournaments. And that's why these tournaments are designed to bring in good competition. Coaches love that to get a measuring stick of where they're at this point. This is like a Big Ten game, just like the Alabama game was like a Big Ten game. And that's what you want to see. Purdue also has Iowa State, Marquette coming up, Auburn coming up on the in the non-conference schedule. So they've got their share of challenges that they're going to see. But they've done very well in these tournaments over the last few years, and Maui and Portland, Oregon, the Nike tournament out in Connecticut at the Hall of Fame tournament. They've done very well. So they know what these things are about. And you have three experienced guys that have been through this drill so many times that they understand what it is. And that, and they got one of those pieces back for the Alabama game. Trey Kaufman-Renn came out 19 points, 15 rebounds. Um, I still think Purdue can rebound better than what it did in the first two games without Trey Kaufman-Renn, but having him made a world of difference in the rebounding category. They were in those two games against Alabama and Akron. They were plus 44 on the boards. Uh, that's a that's a heavy pace to keep up. I'm not sure they can do that, and the rebounding will be challenged this weekend or this week. I expect the rebounding numbers to be closer, but I think Purdue's depth was on display. Um, Omer Mayer really adds a lot off the bench, and he's just going to continue to get better, learning how to play with Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, and everybody else. So they're settling into their roles right now. A long way to go, but you have to like what you see from that group. And again, you get through this weekend and kind of see where things are at, and then gear up and do it again throughout the rest of the month of November, and then they're going to play a couple Big Ten games in early December at Rutgers, which has always been a stumbling block for them for whatever reason. And then I think they host Minnesota in a Big Ten game. Um, and then along with all their non-conference stuff. So they're in good position. They should, you know, they're going to be just fine. They're keeping the turnovers down. They're rebounding well. They're winning those battles. They continue to shoot the three ball well for the most part. And they're getting challenged in different ways. Akron was a high-paced, offensive-minded team that puts pressure on your defense. Purdue ends up giving up 79 points. That's not probably where it should be, but when you score 97, you live with that. But there's some things defensively they need to shore up. They're not, you know, but they are protecting the rim better because you can bring in Daniel Jacobson. And Oscar Clough is a physical presence down there. And I just think since they played the exhibition game at Kentucky and then the other exhibition game at home, and then Evansville, Oakland, Alabama, and then Akron, you see a guy that's just 100 times more comfortable uh, down there on the post. There's no hesitation now. He moves. He he's not backing off any contact. Excuse me, but he's I think really settled into what they need from him, what he expects from himself, and that relationship between him and Kaufman Wren down low is just only going to grow and get better. And they'll face some obstacles with foul trouble and other things that they'll have to deal with. But again, you have other parts coming off the bench. You have a Jack Benner who is a power forward by name, but not a power forward by physical presence. And the advantages that he gives them on the offensive end, being able to bring a big guy out on the perimeter and create more spacing on offense, I think is something that they will really utilize this year. Not every game is going to present that to them, but there'll be games when Jack Benner's going to get more minutes because foul trouble, matchups, whatever, and they're going to try to take that to advantage. I mean, he's a very valuable asset to what they want to do this year, along with other players. And um, so, actually, I'll have a story on Jack just on his transformation from guard to power forward, even though he's not really a power forward, but he plays that position and just kind of the nuances there. And he's got a little Dakota Mathias in him. Um, and PJ Thompson, who oversees the offense, is really looking forward to putting him in spots that he'll be successful and make this team successful. And he has some challenges on the defensive end because he's not as big and strong. He's going to have to defend bigger bodies. But what he brings on the offensive end, I think, is going to counter some of that. So uh, big week for the men. We'll see what happens and see how they handle the competition down in the Bahamas. Now the women's team is a different story. Um, Tuesday night in Lexington, they kept their turnovers down. They only had nine turnovers after committing 24 at Purdue Fort Wayne, which was why they lost that game. And then they commit nine turnovers against number 20 Kentucky. Kentucky's long, athletic, got a big front line. They challenge you defensively, but the shooting was horrendous. Some of that is due to Kentucky, and I think Purdue rushed its shots and didn't get comfortable. One thing I notice about this team is that there are possessions where they do run the offense through. Um, and if they don't, if they don't have the shot, the first shot that they think they're going to have, then they continue to run it through to find a better shot. But a lot of times ball gets stuck or someone just goes one on one. And I don't think that's part of what they're trying to do, not with time on the shot clock. Um, I just, instincts take over, ego takes over. I mean, I don't know. But anyway, they were putrid in the shooting category. They shot 20%. That's the second lowest mark in a single game in program history, 20%. That's 2 out of 10. They were 4 of 37 in the second half. And Yeah, they had some good looks, didn't go in. They were 4 of 19 on layups, which, that's never good. 3 of 19 from three. And, as I've said, I think they have some better shooters this year. But when the defense is on you, the defense is making you do something that you haven't done, then, you get out of sorts. Um, I think they're a little bit more athletic in some certain spots. Tara Day is giving him some production off the dribble and being able to get to the rim a couple times, and she can shoot the ball from outside. Um, but they're you commit 9 turnovers on the road against a ranked team and you lose by 41 points, and those things do not mesh together. They just don't. Um, you can chalk it up to one of those nights from a shooting standpoint. If the opposite had happened, that you had a bunch of turnovers and you shot the ball decently, that's kind of who this team is and has become. But when you flip the script and you only have 9 turnovers on a night that you're shooting one of the worst marks in program history, you almost want the turnovers. I don't know. It's perplexing and confusing um, for this team and this program. Um, this is a game they didn't want to play. They wanted to get out of the contract. Kentucky wouldn't get out of the contract, so they had to come down here and play. And we'll see what benefit they get out of this once they get through their non-conference schedule. But there's several concerns, but the one immediate concern is they just have not played well on the road in their 2 games. They've got another road game in the non-conference at Central Michigan that will be probably more similar to Purdue Fort Wayne than Kentucky. Um, but they haven't shown that they can handle life on the road very well. So um, still, they're kind of, excuse me, there's kind of still treading water to figure out what they have. And, they're trying to get some players healthy. Taylor Feldman, who they earmarked as their point guard, is still dealing with a back issue, although she played nearly 18 minutes Tuesday night. Um, and I think her minutes will continue to increase. Um, but I mean, some of their misses Tuesday night were just, you know, I thought a couple were going to shatter the backboard. Um, they just didn't look, they were never in rhythm and they were never fluid. Um, they didn't get many fast break opportunities. And they had trouble defending Kentucky because of their length and their skill. It's a very talented team, but Kentucky was picked eighth in the SEC. SEC is a really good conference, but where would Kentucky fit in the Big Ten this year? They wouldn't be number one. I don't think they would be number two. Um, maybe not number three, but I think they would challenge for a top four spot in the Big Ten when you look at Maryland and Michigan and some of the other teams that are up there. I think UCLA is head and shoulders above everybody. You got USC in that mix, but you know, I don't know exactly where Kentucky would fit in the Big Ten. But if you're going to lose by 41 to Kentucky, um, then what's going to happen in the Big Ten? And I think that's kind of the long-term concern here. Are we going to see a repeat of what happened last year, where there were a lot of non-competitive games in the conference, and um, you have to wonder if it's headed that direction again. But still some time to figure it out and get some confidence and um, kind of start turning this thing around. One thing I'd like to see more is Madison Layton-Zay just be a little bit more aggressive on offense. I think coming into Tuesday night, she was averaging 4 or 5 field goal attempts. I mean, she needs to be more active offensively for this team. It's not her nature. That's not kind of who she is, but she came back for a reason. Okay. Did you come back just to sit in the shadows and um, earn a paycheck and move on? Or did you come back to make a difference? And, if you ask that question, you're going to get, yeah, she wants to make a difference. But actions right now are sign that they just need more from her. She's a veteran player. She's experienced. She does a lot of good things. Her presence on the floor should be a positive for this team. Um, I just, maybe she's trying to be a little bit more aggressive, but the ball doesn't end up in her hands enough because other players are trying to do their thing, when things break down, or again, just trying to play one-on-one basketball instead of team basketball. So there's some things that need to get ironed out. I'm not suggesting any of those things are happening. It just she just needs to either take a more aggressive stance in wanting to provide some offense, or she's not getting the opportunity to do that, not from a coaching standpoint, but just more of how the dynamics of the team work. But they need her. They need her to produce. I mean, you're a Big Ten team. You can't score 35 points in a 40-minute game. I mean, I don't care who you're playing. You've got to be able to generate some offense. And this is not a this year problem for this program. This has been a several year program or several years problem for this program, not having enough offense on the floor. And you'd hope that that gets rectified through the recruiting process or the transfer process. And, by the numbers, they brought in some players that did score at their previous schools, but again, the question always is, how does that fit at Purdue? How does it fit against the Big Ten teams? How does it fit against the schedule that you're playing? And but this is one of several drawbacks to the portal and all that. But when you bring in a bunch of new faces, you need time to bring it all together. And in reality, it's a long season, but in the other reality, it's not. Um, Before you know it, it's going to be January, and you're going to be in the middle of the Big Ten season. And are you still trying to figure things out at that point? Um, so a lot of questions about them. I don't, I think we have an idea who they are, um, and who they might be, but they've got to do better. These non-conference games are so important to them just to get some wins to maybe put themselves in a position to make the Big Ten tournament at the end of the day. That's goal number one. You don't finish in the bottom three of the Big Ten, but how do they match up against Wisconsin and Northwestern and Penn State and Rutgers? Those are the bottom tier of the league, and Purdue needs to separate itself from that group. Um, and we'll get more into it once the Big Ten season starts. But we know where they won't finish. Um, but can they crawl out of the basement of the Big Ten, at least make the conference tournament, and have enough wins to potentially play in a non-NCAA postseason tournament? Because that's kind of what they're looking at. They've got Miami of Ohio on Sunday at home, a team they beat last year on the road. And then day before Thanksgiving, game against Howard, and then they'll go to Central Michigan the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And they were scheduled to be in Cancun, but they got out of that tournament um, and needed to find, in their opinion, two games that they could win. I think the Howard game is one that they'll win. Um, Central Michigan be a little bit tougher because it's on the road, and it's going to be similar to Purdue Fort Wayne. And to get that game, they had to do a 2-year deal with Central Michigan. So Central Michigan will come back to Mackey Arena next season. One other note on women's basketball: they um, in the next day or two or days, whatever, when the paperwork is finalized, they're gonna add two more international players to their roster for next year. So they have a 3-player 2026 recruiting class, all international players. I'm not even going to begin to try to pronounce their names. One's from the Netherlands, which she's been committed to them for a long time, and she had signed her paperwork, and Purdue has it, so she's all set. The other one is from Israel, and she was here during the Eastern Illinois game. She was on a visit. She went to Vanderbilt and Middle Tennessee. Her first name's Maya. I'm not even going to begin to try to butcher the last name. But they're all kind of, all three of them, from what I understand, are kind of combo guards. Um, and, they're international players, so they bring a different kind of experience. I think we saw early on Ela Karsh from Israel, 21-year-old freshman. You know, some of that experience was coming through, but she's kind of been limited in the last two games. More scouting is done on her. Where's her strengths, where their weakness, what can teams exploit, all that kind of stuff. So that's they're going to have a distinct international flavor to their roster and this recruiting class. And it's so hard to tell right now what the roster will look like next year. They have two players that will exhaust eligibility, Madison Laytonzay and Taylor Feldman. But beyond that, you don't know who's coming back. Taylor Henderson's injured right now. Does she say, okay, I'm gonna go somewhere else now, or or what? Or you know, who knows what the people that are playing right now, what they want to do. So you have no idea. So you can't. I mean, well, the only thing we do know for sure is you can have 15 players on your roster after the settlement rules came out, and that's what you can have. You can't have any more. You can have less, but you can't have any more. Um, so we have no idea what next year's roster is going to look like and how these three players potentially could fit in. Um, and we won't know that for several months till we get through the season and how the season looks and if there's any other changes coming at the end of the year. So um, yeah, it's not a good situation right now, but again, they got a chance to string some wins together in the non-conference to at least gain some confidence, gain some momentum, feel better about themselves, and put themselves in a position to compete better in the Big Ten this year. Football doesn't play this week. They're off until the bucket game day after Thanksgiving. That's is it for Purdue. No bowl game, no nothing. They've got a handful of losing streaks they're trying to end. This will be a tough mountain to climb against IU, which is one game away from being in the Big Ten championship game, one game away from really locking up a bye in the college football playoff, one game away from retaining the bucket. They've got a lot on the line, and I don't think they're going to let up on the gas pedal. They haven't let up all year. I don't think they'll do it now. I'm not going to sit here and predict a score for that game because you don't know. Um, can Purdue rise and not shock the world, but can they? Barry Odom had nothing to do with last year's 66 nothing loss, so he doesn't feel the pain of that. Only a handful of players feel the pain of that because they experienced it. But when you have 54 transfers and 82 newcomers, they don't feel the pain of that. They don't understand that. Um, and that's the thing with another thing with transfers is your rivalry games. Do they lose some luster because you're changing the parts so much every year that you don't have that buildup of hatred towards your rival? Playing IU. I mean, if you put truth serum in some of these transfers and ask them, what does Indiana and Purdue play for? Some of them will know because you walk around the facility and you see it. But how much are you invested in this rivalry? Where in the not so long ago days, you would You come in as a freshman, you might redshirt, you might play, but anyway, you're building up and you see the Purdue IU game 3 or 4 times and you understand its importance. You understand the energy that comes with it. You understand how important it is to the fan base. And I don't think you have that anymore. Not that you don't have players that stay with the program 4 or 5 years, because you do. You don't have as many. And then you're bringing people from the outside that are used to a different rivalry, or they don't know rivalries because they bounce from year to year. They bounce from school every year. They don't really get involved in it. And I think for a rivalry game, you need to be invested. I really do. I really think you do. I think the Michigan Ohio State people are invested, even though they bring in new people as well. But I think those programs have a core group of players that have been with them for an extended period of time that they understand. And you need upperclassmen to relate to the newcomers how important this game is, and all rivalry games. And I think we're going to lose some of that with the transfer portal over time. I think we are starting to lose it a little bit. Um, but Barry Odom had nothing to do with last year. I mean, he can't sit there and pound the table and fire him up, how embarrassing it was and all that, because he didn't experience that. And again, only a handful of players did, and one that did doesn't play anymore, Devin Mockabee, because he got injured. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's going to be another interesting offseason. I would not expect the changeover that we had last year. There'll be movement. They've already determined who they want to keep and who they want to let go. And then they've probably already started earmarking, or they've been earmarking all year, potential targets in the portal that they need to bring in. And I'll say it again. I think they need an upgrade at the quarterback position. And, if Ryan Brown's your guy, why you keep rotating quarterbacks? The strategy against Washington, okay, I can buy that, but we're starting to see more of that. I mean, if Ryan Brown's your guy, he's your guy. I'm not a big believer in the two quarterback thing. You know, we have to go back to the old saying, if you have two, then you have none. Um, I know Jeff Brom did it on occasion, and I think there's spots for it, but I do think you need to commit to one guy. Now, other things need to happen around your quarterback, like your receivers need to catch the ball. They didn't do that well enough this year, so they need upgrades there, or just better practice there, or better focus and concentration. But you're going to see a lot of new faces again because that's the nature of the beast. But um, where those new faces fit in, you need help on the offensive line, you need help on the defensive line, you need help in the secondary, you need help across the board. But I do think for Purdue to get where it wants to go, and number one, where it wants to go is just to get to a bowl game. I do think you need an elite level quarterback, and that means you have to spend the money to get an elite level quarterback. And I don't, every program is going to take a different approach to how they do it. Um, but you're going to have, it's like free agency and pro sports. You're going to have to overspend to get what you think you have. And it's not always going to work out. It's just not. And that's why your talent evaluation has to be really good, has to be sharp. And it's not as much going out and uncovering diamonds out there. It's about having good, solid talent evaluation and then doing everything you can to get that player here. But all the elite ones have a lot of people knocking on their door. And what separates Purdue from everybody else? I mean, they're not winning. Um, they've been competitive this year for the most part. Um, but again, it's a hard sell, but one that, you know, and I think the biggest thing going against Purdue right now is the success of Indiana. Um, not that everybody's shining a light and say, well, you need to be like Indiana, but it's just their success is overshadowing what you're trying to do. Um, and I think somehow Purdue needs to move it forward a little bit and start having its own success to kind of get out of that shadow a little bit. But easier said than done. Is there enough players to go around for Indiana and Purdue to be successful at a high level? Sure, there are. You just got to find them and you got to coach them up and you got to do all that kind of stuff. But just a word about last week's loss at Washington. Really a unprofessional display by a couple of players. Not, want to lump the whole team into it, but the unsportsmanlike penalties were embarrassing for Purdue. Um, and what does accountability look like in those situations? One player got ejected because he got two unsportsmanlike fouls. Um, the other one, I think, is on his sixth year. So how do you how do you handle that? But there has to be some accountability for that behavior. And my theory on the thing, and I wasn't there, I just watched it, that I think, Ryan Walters is on the other sideline, whether it was spoken or what, but I think his players wanted to have his back in the game and ramped up their aggressiveness a little bit to kind of have their coaches back. And that spilled over into some trash talking and some other things that happened during the course of a game. And, emotions got high. But the thing is, a lot of players on Purdue's team didn't play for Walters. Um, but, coaches use a lot of different things to motivate players. And again, I'm not sure Ryan Walters said anything or he needed to say anything. I mean, they understood the importance of the game to him. Washington did. He got a game ball afterwards. Um, I mean, here's a guy that probably feels like he was wronged and getting fired after 2 years. And to me, that just lacks self-awareness about your situation. And, maybe over time he's come to the realizations like, yeah, well, not everything should be shouldered on him because there were people that put him in that position that miscalculated the kind of person that they were getting, the kind of coach that they were getting, and let him kind of run amok and hire an inexperienced staff and so on and so forth. We don't need to go deep into that. But you hope he's had some self-reflecting moments. It's like, okay, next time I'm in this position, here's what needs to happen. Here's what I need to do. Here's how I need to handle it. And will he get another opportunity? I have no idea. Um, but it would be interesting to see how he would handle it, or he would still be the immature guy that was here for 2 years. You hope he's humbled just a little bit. But anyway, the Washington game was a bad look for Purdue. It was a bad look for the program, and you don't want it to get repeated because there has been progress made this year. I know it doesn't show up in the win loss, um, but this program's in a better place today than it was at the end of last year when they made the coaching change. Now, how much better? The record tells you not that much better, but just maybe the way they go about their business every day is better. The way they handle their stuff off the field, the way that inside the building, how they prepare for games, how they prepare for workouts, how they coach their players, how they teach their players. I think there's differences there, and you hope all those things over time will lead to um, a better record at some point, more wins, and the 26 schedule is just as challenging as this year's schedule. It's always going to be challenging, um, and later we can delve into what can this team do next year? And number one, we don't know because we don't know who's going to be on the roster. And that's the thing about this. We don't know who's coming back. We don't know who's leaving. We don't know who's coming in. The only thing we know is the schedule, who they play. We don't know the order of Big Ten games. We know the opponents, but we just don't know how that sequence is going to come together other than the IU game will be the last game. uh, in the Big Ten stratosphere. All right, well, that's gonna do it. Appreciate your time. Um, Feel free to share if you want, if it's worthy of a share. It's like, the Thanksgiving dinner table. Pass the potatoes down to the next person, pass the turkey plate down to the next person, pass the stuffing, keep passing it along. Just like this podcast, video cast, the has been podcast. Just pass it along to your neighbor, pass it along to the next person, pass it along to the kids' table. However you want to do it, it's fine. So yeah, treat this like Thanksgiving. You got your scoop, move it on down the line. How about that? All right. Thanks. Appreciate it. And we'll talk another time.